it's far more than just being a travel agent. It's creating memories for people. And now, with the journey that I'm on, being in an alcohol-free space, and as I talked before, on a self-development journey, because the two go hand in hand, right? It's helping people along their self-development journey, because travel is an awesome way to explore yourself, find out what you're all about, right? And that's so cool about quitting drinking, because we put so many hours into drinking, right? And when we quit drinking, we have all this time on our hands. And if we don't figure out what to do with that time, we're not going to be successful in our journey, right? So when you're traveling, you're introducing yourself to healthy habits that you might not experience at home.
Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Terry Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion, learn the truth behind the alcohol myths, and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. All right, if you've ever been a travel enthusiast, get ready to be hooked on travel, because my guest today, Darci Murray, is going to tell us about her very unique travel company, which the tagline is Heightened Sensory Experiences. And we talk about all of the unique things that Darci offers for those of us that want to travel with a different take on this alcohol-free experience. And I'll just highlight a couple of things for you to notice as you listen to this episode. One is that Darci is passionate about having all the fun and all the adventures. And we talk about the opportunity to learn more about yourself and to get back in touch with that core essence of who you are and how we can use travel to do that. And I think it's very powerful. She curates experiences that allow us to get back in touch with perhaps our youth, where we like to dance and we like to zip line and we like to hike and we like to have cool experiences. And so Darci offers so many different cultural experiences based on the location that I think you're going to find something for everyone. And two other things I want to highlight for you to pay attention to in this episode that are so cool and unique. One is that Darci has created something called dry grad trips. So if you have a senior in college or high school and you want to help them experience more of the world, Darci has curated dry grad trips so that you can safely send your youth on a trip where alcohol is not the focus. And I think that is such a beautiful offering in this place where we have so many concerns as parents about what we're exposing our children to, and we know that alcohol is out there. So bravo to Darci and her company for creating that. And also, she has something called Sober Locals, which I think is so cool. So the best travel agents are the locals, right? And so as Darci expands her Hooked on Travel company and is meeting more individuals, she is creating a roster of individuals who are experts in their hometown and inviting them to be part of the experience, so that when you travel to New York City, when you travel to Las Vegas, when you travel to Niagara Falls, you are getting to experience it through the eyes of a local. And that's pretty unique. So I think you're going to love this episode. Check out their brand new revamped website, which is exciting, makes me want to sign up for about 3 or 4 trips in 2025. And they do have a lot of trips. So take a look. And also, I forgot to highlight one really cool difference is that Darci has not limited her trips to only sober individuals, but also those who are sober supportive. So if you have a spouse who drinks occasionally, and they won't be drinking on the trip, but they can come with you without having to identify as being 100% alcohol free. And I think this is really a unique offer and important because maybe we want to travel with an adult child or a best friend who is supportive of our journey and is willing to not drink or drink in front of us, but wants to come along and be part of this cool experience. So check out Hooked on Travel, enjoy this episode, and get excited about what adventure awaits you. Well, hey everyone, it's Terry back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast. And today we're going to take a little adventure together because I have Darci Murray with me, and she's going to tell us all about her passionate alcohol free business called Hooked Alcohol Free Travel. So, Darci and I met in Seattle at the Sober in the City event. And I may tell the backstory, Darci, of how I think I offended you right off the bat. But we had a few laughs and we got to talking. And I said, I really want you to come and share more about your passion and your business here on the Sober Edge podcast. So welcome.
Oh, thank you. Pretty hard to offend me, Terry.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, maybe surprised was a better word. But I had a certain bias about travel. And, I think we're going to be able to touch on that in this conversation. But first of all, Darci, you've been alcohol free for quite a long time. Will you tell us just briefly kind of your experience of becoming sober back in the dark days, I'll call them, and then kind of what you're noticing now with the alcohol free movement?
Okay. Well, loaded question. So, I had a second rodeo. Okay.
Okay.
So I first stopped drinking 20 years ago, actually, and I had 8 years of sobriety underneath me. So I had my four beautiful boys, and they were all born when I was sober. And when I had my last child, I kind of thought like, hey, I am a super mom, like I'm scrapbooking, I'm in charge of this, I'm in charge of that. I am rocking this motherhood thing. And I started to drink again. So there was a 6 year hiatus within that 20 year 20 year span, and now I have 8 years again. So
Good for you. And I thank you for sharing that because I think that we all have our own experience around, if we drink again or we have a period of drinking or we stop once and that's it. And it's so powerful to know that we can start over again. And I actually never say start over. I really like starting from where we're at. And so I
Mhm.
would imagine that those first 8 years, you gained a lot of experience that have served you in these second 8 years. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I just knew that it was possible again, right? It's like I've done this before, and shame on me for getting so self-involved and thinking that I was like so grandiose that I could handle it. And yeah, I mean, I'm thankful for my journey in every shape or form. Like I am truly grateful to have a problem with my drinking, and I'll admit it. It is a problem. It wasn't just it was a coping mechanism that had to go. I 100% used it as a coping mechanism. Definitely had an addictive component for me, and but I'm grateful for it, right? Like having that, I actually believe it's a gift, like having that gift of forcing me to take a self-development journey, because that's what it was. It was like, hey, you have this, you need to deal with it. And with that comes this self-development journey, which has just been a beautiful, beautiful ride. And that's a gift that I can give my children too, right? So, and they've got to see it. I hear people talk like, oh, well, my kids have never seen me drink or whatever, right? I'm actually kind of glad they did because they've got to see the transformation. And grass is always greener on the other side. And for kids that have never seen it, that's a beautiful concept too. But my kids did see it, and they do have a little bit of a memory of it, right? And they've got to see the transformation, and they've got to see mom come from like an insecure doormat to somebody that is like thriving in the alcohol-free space, right? So it's really neat.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. 100%. Thank you for saying that because it is powerful to look at this as a beautiful opportunity. Like, I would not be the person that I am today had I not had my struggles with alcohol. And while I could say, gosh, I wish that I hadn't wasted so much time getting my what together. It is a beautiful place that I can reflect on and say, I would not have done this self-development work. I would not be as evolved of a human. There's a lot of work left to do, but I would not be here and moving forward without the lessons that I learned all along the way. And I'm just coming up this week, Darci. So this will air after I've already reached 9 years alcohol free. So I was recording a solo podcast about my 9 years. And I love to think about this journey as becoming alcohol free and then living alcohol free.
Mhm.
And I think the becoming starts well before the first day we stop. And so I just love that you recognize that this is a gift as well. And I agree, our children see that resilience. They see the possibility of transformation. They see hard work. They see vulnerability. Like we model so much in our recovery journey that it's valuable.
I'll tell you a really quick story because I just love this so much. I was at the office and my son was in grade 11 and he was doing a timeline and he called me while I was at the office and he's like, Mom, what's your sobriety date again? And I was like, why do you need this? And he's like, because I'm at school and we're making this timeline of all the major events in our life. And I need to put it on my timeline. And I was actually a little bit mortified. I was like, my son goes to this private school, right? And I don't want this on his timeline for his teachers to see or anything like that, because I was ashamed, right? And I said to my son, I said, Dayton, I don't think that this is appropriate that you put this on your timeline. And he said, why not, Mom? Like, that's a really, really important date. And think of the person you are now to the person you were then. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool, right?
Yes. Oh, that gives me chills because we really are, teaching our children by our example. It's not what we say, it's what we do. And I think that's such a place to honor you and to acknowledge publicly whether he put it on his timeline or not. That's his belief about this journey. There's nothing to hide. There's something to celebrate.
Yeah, right?
Mm.
Crazy. Yeah, and that allowed me to let go of quite a bit of my shame and like what I was feeling internally too. It was a growing experience for me. Definitely a moment.
Yeah. And I think that the work that you and I do, both working in the industry that supports alcohol free individuals, we're kind of living our sobriety out loud. So, there is no more ducking around it or pretending that, it was something other than what it was. And I think there's so much power in owning our story. So I'm curious, Darci, you have a business that has come out of this journey of your alcohol-free lifestyle. And were you always interested in travel, or were you a travel agent before you started
Oh, yeah.
focusing on alcohol-free travel?
Oh, it goes even deeper than that. So my mother, my mom owns the travel agency that I work at. So literally from, being like 6 years of age and going to my mom's office. And that was back in the days of like brochures when they had like piles and piles and piles of brochures at travel agencies, right? And yeah, I remember going to her office and I would take the globe because she had this globe in her office and I would spin it and my finger would just very lightly touch the globe, right? And it was like, wherever my finger lands, well, that's the place that I'm going to research next, right? So yeah, it's been with me forever. And I love my career. I love my job. I think it's far more than just being a travel agent. It's creating memories for people. And now, with the journey that I'm on being in an alcohol-free space and as I talked before on a self-development journey because the two go hand in hand, right? It's helping people along their self-development journey because travel is an awesome way to explore yourself, find out what you're all about, right? And that's so cool about quitting drinking because we put so many hours into drinking, right? And when we quit drinking, we have all this time on our hands. And if we don't figure out what to do with that time, we're not going to be successful in our journey, right? So when you're traveling, you're introducing yourself to healthy habits that you might not experience at home, right? So you might be out, for instance, I went to Tanzania And our tour guide was really into bird watching. He really point out all these birds. And I was like, really? Can we just go find the elephants? Like, and now it's like, you know what? I find so I know I sound kind of silly saying this, but I find so much tranquility in watching birds. I really do. I really, really do. And that's kind of a healthy habit that I never knew that I was interested in, but I figured it out while I was traveling, right?
Ooh. Yeah, this is so fascinating. I want to talk about this more because I work with clients who are on the precipice. They're not drinking and so they've made this behavior change, but their mind is they're still wrapping their mind around what does it mean to live alcohol free. And we were recently having a conversation about how do I start to dream again? And how do I know, what I want to do next? And what are my dreams and aspirations? And so I'm really intrigued by this idea of using travel as kind of the starting point or a place to explore. So tell us more about that. What else have you noticed or seen? And what do you see with your clients that they experience in this journey?
Well, I intentionally fill the itineraries with what I call healthy habits or opportunities to explore yourself, right? So, we've done crazy things like bowling. I mean, that's just one that's easy to come off my tongue. We did axe throwing. We've done cold water plunges in Iceland. We've done photography lessons on our phones just to massage, um, chocolate carving. On our Mexico itinerary, we have a Latin dance class. I always try to include a cooking lesson in destination with somebody that's local, so we get a cultural feel of their cuisine. Yeah, those are just a couple, but like I said, they're intentional. They're intentional. I throw them in intentionally so people can explore some healthy habits. And
Yeah.
that brings up something else too, because people come to me all the time like, oh, so you do alcohol-free travel. Everything's going to be so much more less expensive. I'm like, well, actually, no, because you're actually doing things, right? So, you look at an all-inclusive resort like a Rio or something like that, and they have one bartender that takes care of 70 people. That's not too much to pay that one bartender, right? But when you're dealing with people that are alcohol free and actually out doing things like quad rides and zip lining and whitewater rafting or like I said, a Latin dance class or whatever, right? It does add up. The itineraries are actually more than just going to an all inclusive.
But I love that because it's more than just a destination. It's actually an experience. And what
Mhm.
you're talking about is by intentionally building in this opportunity, it's like beyond even healthy habits, it's self-discovery. Like, did you ever love to dance? Did you take a dance class in junior high? Perhaps this will spark something that you forgot. Or it'll be a hard no and you'll say like, okay, I can cross off the maybe I'll be a Latin dancer in my future off the list. I am really big on curiosity. So I love to invite people to just start to explore, take a small step forward, and that action will give you feedback. And so what you're talking about is curating an experience for people to sort of fast track some of these things that they don't know if they're going to be the thing. And so I love that from cooking to dancing to photography to, wellness activities. That's such a beautiful way to build in more to this travel experience.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So our tagline is full sensory travel or sensory heightened travel, right? We use that all the time. If you go onto our website, you'll see like hooked, sensory heightened travel, right?
Mm. Tell me about the name, Hooked.
About hooked? Yeah, I love it. Well, it's a little bit of a play on words, right? Like, and it's, hooked on healthy habits, hooked on community, hooked on the self development journey. Uh, yeah, just replacing those maybe negative behaviors that we used to be hooked on with positive behaviors. So
Mhm.
it's a play on the whole
Yeah.
addiction type thing. Let's get addicted to different things. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, that's beautiful. So, you've always been in the travel industry. When did you kind of make the switch to the focus of I'm going to start offering, and maybe it's just part of your business, but I'm going to do this alcohol-free offer or these travel experiences that are going to look a little different than the typical travel experience. When did that sort of shift for you?
Oh, 2001. Absolutely, hands down. 2001 is and it's a great story. So got sober in 2017 for the second time. That was my second rodeo, 2017. And I was leading kind of like I was really ashamed. I was really, really ashamed of a person that, chose to drink too much wine and some of the actions that happened while I was, maybe intoxicated, right? So I, I saw this one girl online that I had met through swim club, right? So my kids did swim club, and she had posted that she was doing alcohol-free coaching. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would never have guessed that she was leading an alcohol-free lifestyle, right? So I touch base with her online and I'm like, let's get together and have coffee, right? And she's like an entrepreneurial kind of spirit, right? So we met for coffee and it was like kind of neat to just like talk to somebody that was also leading an alcohol-free lifestyle. And she's like, oh, when you're in travel, so we should plan a trip. Let's have like an alcohol-free trip. Let's have a girls trip, and invite some of our friends on this alcohol-free trip. And then I was like, well, why would we do that? Because, that's leaving out like half the population, right? And she's like, yeah, 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 right, you're right. And I've also found that on my journey, I'm it's great to bond with women. Um, but the dynamics of my past, I found that I learned an awful lot from the men that I met on my journey. So I really didn't want to leave them out. And she was at kind of thinking like, let's make it an all female trip. And I'm like, well, no, no, no. So then it was like, well, why are we just focusing on the people we know? Like, why don't we just branch this out? And then we kind of Googled what exists for alcohol free travel, and then it's like, yeah, I started hooked from that conversation. It was literally we started off with the two of us going on a trip, inviting some friends. No, let's ask some men to go too. To let's making it an open invitation, and it's not just, and this is really important. It's not just sober, alcohol-free people. It's people that are sober supportive as well,
Mm.
right? So my very first trip, my cousin went on, and she will have the occasional glass of wine. She loves my enthusiasm for this alcohol-free travel concept, and she enjoys being alcohol-free. And so it's sober supportive people, right? So like family members, or my son went on our Italy trip, right? And just don't drink while you're there, or if you do, don't do it right in front of us, right? So we have a big cruise taking place to Alaska, July 8th, 2025, right? And we have like 60 people signed up. And it's like uncles, and there's family members that are coming too. So it's not just like, oh, we're just like a sober group. It's like, family members are coming too, right? And they get that they're part of an alcohol-free group and they'll just keep it to themselves. And I don't anticipate any problems. But yeah, I guess I just really wanted to say that it does include sober supportive people.
Mm. Yeah, and thank you for saying that. And I think that's so beautiful because one of the things that I have recognized around this journey is the inclusivity is really important to me. And you and I, when we were at the Sober in the City event in Seattle, there was a panel that was hosted by Martha Wright. And Martha is a personal friend and also an alcohol free coach. And she used to own a winery and had a wine import business. And she said, I wish I had known how to be more inclusive to the people who are not drinking, even when I was still running my winery. She goes, I thought I was doing amazing by offering water. And yet, we think about we need to have more people in this conversation because the reality is that our whole life is not tied to thinking about drinking, thinking about not drinking. No, that we're alcohol free. And so we're moving into this beautiful freedom and we want to travel and not have the impediment of alcohol, but we also want to travel with our loved ones and we want to show them just as much what an alcohol free travel experience is like as as anyone else. I mean, I think that one of the things that I've recognized from Sober in the City is that I want more people to experience that and to see how much fun and how exciting it is to be in that environment, and that we don't need alcohol to have fun. We don't need alcohol to fuel our experiences. And so I think there's on so many levels that's just very cool.
And Hooked is really morphed too, because when I first started Hooked, it was like kind of, I was really focused on the person leading a sober journey, right? Um, and that was mainly in recovery. Like that was my kind of like my thought process when I first opened Hooked, right? And we've morphed a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. I put out this one trip to Morocco, and I was so keen on this itinerary. I'm like, Morocco is a non-drinking country. They got sun, they got spices, they got tea ceremonies, they got mosque bells, they've got tanneries, camels, sand. It is full sensory, like it's going to be fantastic, right? And I pushed this trip harder than I've pushed any other trip in my life. Like I really, really pushed this itinerary, and it was crickets, like nothing, 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 no inquiries whatsoever. I'm like, what the heck? Like seriously, what am I doing wrong? This is a perfect alcohol-free destination. So I held a focus group, and I invited like a whole bunch of people that I knew, and I put it on our alcohol-free bottle shop, our local alcohol-free bottle shops socials as well. So people that I didn't know as well. And we sat down and had this alcohol free travel focus group. And I'm like, so where do you guys want to go? Because I've got this itinerary and I don't understand. So educate me. Like, where do you guys want to go? Right. And they're like, Greece, Italy, some cruises would be great. How about Las Vegas? Ireland would be super cool. And I was like, these are really high drinking ideas that you guys have, right? Like Ireland's known for beer, Italy's known for wine, Greece is known for ouzo, cruises are known for all-inclusive, abundance, right?
Yes.
And it was very eye-opening to me because it was not the destination, it was about inclusivity. They want to do what everybody else wants to do, as a drinking traveler wants to do, but they want to do it with like-minded people, right? So yes, we launched a cruise right after that, and we had 14 people join right away, and it was to Greece. And I chose a cruise line. I chose Virgin Voyages because I mean, there's a lot of cruise lines that do Greece, right? Virgin Voyages has the most mocktails at sea, and they have like an abundance of restaurants on board, and every single restaurant is its own entity. So it had its own menu and their own mocktail offering, right? So you couldn't even taste all the different mocktails on board. They had so many. It was fantastic. Um, yeah. So inclusivity. I can't even say that word.
Inclusivity. Yeah. Well, and it's really powerful to, acknowledge that people want to do the things they've always wanted to do. They don't want to change where they go just because they're not drinking. They want to experience, like you said, Italy without alcohol. And so I think that's so cool. And Martha, to mention her again, she lives part-time in Paris. And I remember her telling me that one of the things she did, she joined a speakeasy tour. So they took a group on a walking tour and they showed them all the little hidden speakeasies. And she just didn't drink. They would offer a drink at these places when they got there, but she was more interested in the culture, the history, the architecture. It wasn't about, what was in her glass. And she said people were fascinated that she was on the speakeasy tour and not drinking alcohol. But for her, it was about the experience. And that's exactly what you're talking about, Darci, is we can have an elevated experience. And in fact, probably in my mind, in your mind, we do see it as an elevated experience because alcohol often precludes the things we would have done on a trip. How many people do we know who've gone on a cruise and said, oh, yeah, I didn't do any of the activities because I was hungover? Or I thought I would get up and paddleboard or see the sunrise, and I never did because I was sleeping off the night before. And I think I feel sorry for those people. Like, you're really missing out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first time I toured Europe, I was like 21 years old, and it was all about the nights, right? Like it's like just to go to the bars. I could have done that back home. All the bars look the same at night. Like seriously, let's face it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe different accents. Maybe the people have different accents, but that's about it. That's the only difference. But
Yeah.
on that note, you were talking about with Martha, we are offering the world's first alcohol-free wine tour. So we're really, really excited about that. We just launched it on October 1st, for Sober October, but we've been talking about it for a while, and we're going to Germany, and we're visiting 4 different vineyards in Germany because Germany is the rock stars of alcohol-free wine. And then we're also offering another alcohol-free wine tour in Australia for 2026. So we've got 2 on our website, our brand new website, and it's kind of cool, right? Like the world's first alcohol-free wine tour. You think like the de-alcoholization process was invented by Carl Jung in, I can't remember the year, but it's 117 years ago. 117 years ago that process was developed, right? And just now we're taking the world's first alcohol-free wine tour. So it's about
That
time.
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that. That's super exciting. And it just goes to show that there's no end to what is available to us to experience when it comes to travel. And those people that I was one of those people who thought that when I stopped drinking, I was going to have less of life experiences, that I was going to be giving up this one thing and I was going to be missing out. And the
Mhm.
reality is, it's just not true. But it's very hard to see yourself in a experience that you used to drink in and then think, well, I'll never go to a winery again. So I love that you're doing that. And I just think it's so empowering to know that there are options beyond what we're thinking about now, and new things are coming along. So, what have you noticed in a couple of questions? One thing I'm just sort of curious, what's changed in the alcohol-free industry? It feels like there's a swell that things are. I'm starting to interview more travel people who are interested in this slice of the business. I'm starting to see more opportunities out there, and I'm wondering if this is just my perception because I'm in a sort of a sober bubble, or do you see it overall with the alcohol or with the travel industry?
I I do see more of it since I even launched in 2021, right? Yeah, I see a lot of retreats, and that is very different from travel too, right? So I don't know how to distinguish that, but a retreat, you just go to one place, which is fantastic, and there's a lot of self-development, which we're about too. Um, but you're staying in that one place, right? And it's super safe because that one place, definitely they're choosing destinations where alcohol is completely removed from the premises, right? And where Hooked is a bit different. Yeah, we are getting on cruise ships. There is alcohol there, not gonna lie, right? But we're about the community that is traveling. So I see a lot of retreats. I don't see so much travel yet. So we are licensed, 100% licensed. We have all the accreditations in place. So any suppliers that we're using, people have the safety of knowing that they're dealing with a licensed agency as well, which I
Mhm.
think is important.
Yes, yes. And I'm glad you brought up retreats because I remember one of the first groups that I coached, I met with them at a Sober in the City event after they were alcohol free for, it'd been over a year since we'd coached together. But they were saying, I want to travel and I want to travel with, people who are not drinking. I want to have a different kind of fun, but I don't want to go to a yoga retreat. And I think a lot of times we sort of make that association in our mind that it is a retreat experience. It's all about wellness because I'm becoming healthier. And I absolutely believe there is a place for that. And there are a lot of my friends and fellow coaches who offer those types of retreats.
Mhm.
And I think they're great. But I also love that you are forging a new path for people who want to, heck with whether alcohol's around or not. I'm having so much fun ziplining and whitewater rafting that I'm paying no attention.
Yeah.
And it's just not a part of the experience, even though it's around us, because that's really real life. I mean, we can't hide away from the fact that we live in an alcohol centric world. And when we go to hotels and restaurants and cruises, alcohol is a part of that environment. And so I think it's really powerful and empowering to offer this different experience. So have you hit any resistance? Have you had people say, oh, I couldn't possibly go on a cruise if there's alcohol aboard?
Yeah, a little bit, but That's okay. That's not my client, right? Like that, not everybody's your client, right? So people looking for a treat, they're not my client, and that's okay. So I've, like you said, I've carved my own little niche path, and I'm thrilled with it, right? So I was gonna say something and I forgot.
That's okay. Well, it'll come back to you. But one of the things that I noticed, Darci, when I started looking in and you started sharing a little bit when we were together in person, the experiences that you're offering, you have a lot. It's not like one a year. Like I feel like there are. You're always launching something new and exciting, and you've already done quite a few trips. So tell us about some of the trips that you've done, maybe a couple of highlights, and then tell us what's coming up for 2025.
Okay, so what our first trip was Iceland, and that was following in the footsteps of Zac Efron and Darren O'Lean. They have that Down to Earth series. I don't know if you've seen it. Anyway, Zac Efron is alcohol free, and Darren O'Lean is all about healthy living and eating and whatnot, right? So we really we did. We followed in their footsteps, and that was a great trip. The pictures that came out of Iceland are phenomenal. And are we going back to Iceland? Absolutely. As soon as so you gotta walk your talk, right? So once we walked our talk with Iceland, people saw the images go up. And then the inquiries came in, right? So I've got a lot of people that are very interested in Iceland, and that is on our our roster for 2025. Um, After Iceland, we did Italy, and Italy was 14 people. And it was a bus tour that started it, but private. So there was only alcohol-free people on board. So it's like a mini bus type thing. We started in Milan and worked down the boot all the way down to Naples and then back up to Rome. So we flew into Milan and then out of Rome. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Very go, 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 though. We had a travel writer on board, actually, from the Globe and Mail. And it was my first time being around, a travel writer. And so I've got all that. I've got to impress going on. Um, and talking to her, she's just like, I cannot believe what you guys accomplish in a day because we're getting up earlier, we're going to bed earlier, and there's not that sitting around at the bar time, right? She's just like, you literally did all of Italy in 13 days, right? Like I do not have that feeling of I've got to go back and check this off my list. Like we really, really conquered Italy. Yeah, and that was just kind of neat to get her perspective. She couldn't believe the because she's done a lot of tours because she's a travel writer. She couldn't believe the level of authentic conversations.
Mm.
And I think that that's really important because when you're coming together as a group, I mean, really somebody that's 20 years old and somebody that's 70 years old, there's a big gap there. But just having the common ground of not drinking, they bond like that, right? It doesn't matter what nationality you are. The fact that everybody has this common ground of not drinking, the authenticity of the relationships and the conversation is phenomenal. We had this one girl from Minneapolis, and she said on day two, she's like, I feel like I've known you guys all my life. And she goes, I've traveled before. And she goes, I do not have the space in my mind for small talk. I do not want to talk about the weather. I'm here on a self development journey, traveling with like minded people. And this is fantastic.
Oh, yes, that is so cool. I often say, Darci, that when we are in these groups with alcohol-free individuals and there's no small talk, it's all big talk.
Mhm.
And we really are, exactly as your travel writer noted, having these deeper conversations because we have cut through a lot of those surface layers and we're really getting down to our authentic self. And I think that's such a beautiful part of this. And yes, imagine like a taste of what we got at our Sober in the City weekend where, just deep conversations, wanting to know more, wanting to connect. I'm so lucky because I have this podcast. So, I pick people out. I'm like, come on the podcast. I want to get to know you. But imagine doing that for 14 days. Like, what a cool experience.
Oh, for sure. And then our repeat clientele has, I think all but two people have rebooked.
Mm. Oh,
Mhm.
my.
Mhm.
That in itself. Yeah. So after Italy, where else have you guys been? Because again,
Okay,
I've
so right after
done
Italy, we went
so
to
many
Nashville.
things.
And Nashville was it was so perfect because it reflected everything that Hope stands for, right? It's like we are immersed in a very high drinking city. Like it's the bachelorette capital of the world, right?
My
And
goodness.
like people are like, why are you going to Nashville? Like it's just like people that are fall down drunk all the time. Okay, so we arrived and we took a monster truck tour of the downtown Nashville. So fun. And like we're in this monster truck and looking at all the lights and watching the people, and that was fantastic. And then we did a line dancing lesson. We ate barbecue. We went to the Country Music Hall of Fame. We went to the Grand Old Opry. Stood on the stage of the Grand Old Opry and like got to really like take it in. Like as a person that was like hungover or just you don't take that in like the names that have stood on that stage. I do like my country music. I get that not everybody does.
Yeah, no, I think it's beautiful. And you're right. We're having these experiences with a fresh perspective, with all of our senses. And oh, I love it. I got to go on a trip with you because that alone sounds amazing. So my on my bucket list is to go to New Orleans. And I know New Orleans is supposed to be such a, a boozy environment. But to me, it's like I want to see like all of the architecture and the voodoo stuff and experience like so much more of the culture that is way beyond, just alcohol and the music. And yeah, so it sounds like your trips really do try to have that immersive experience. And as you said, that heightened sensory experience. Do you always go with them?
Okay, that's exactly what I was just going to bring up next. So no, I have four children of my uh, it is hard for me to get away, and I don't want to go away. I want Hook to offer more trips, right? So that being said, we've launched our Sober Locals program. So, yes, Nashville, I did lead that tour, right? But going forward, I want someone else to lead Nashville, and Nashville will always be on our roster. We did expand it this year to include a bit of a road trip. So, starting in Memphis, and then driving to Nashville, and then driving to Pigeon Forge, where Dolly Parton's Dollyland is, or Dollywood, sorry, is, right? So it's a bit of a Tennessee road trip type thing. But yeah, and now we have a Vegas itinerary when we have our host is Tad Chatham there. We have New York, the Sober New Yorker, and Melissa McGovern, and she's leading a Christmas experience in New York. We have Kat Loynes, who lives in San Diego, and she's leading a spring break in San Diego. And Toronto, I did go to Toronto and to to take part of a mocktail competition. And I was blown away because I'm like Canadian, right? Like I'm from Vancouver. So Toronto, other side of Canada, I'd never been there. Even at like 51 years of age, I've never been to Toronto. And I arrived in that city and it is so cool. It has got the best vibe. It makes you proud to be Canadian because the people there are just rocking it. Like they really have a completely different vibe than the West Coast of Vancouver. I mean, we're cool too, but it was very, very interesting for me to experience that. And we have Lisa, who traveled to Nashville with us. She's another travel writer, and she was on the Nashville trip, and she's leading the tour in Toronto. And so it's Niagara Falls in the winter versus the summer. So something, a little bit more full sensory. Yeah. So we have our Sober Locals program, which is gonna alleviate some of the travel from me. And I want people, so the Alaska cruise that's taking place in July, we have a sober host, Elise Bryson from the Sober Curator, right? So she's got her own audience. She's got her fantastic social presence that she has. And, she covers every sober event newsworthy that I can think of. They're posting a couple of times a day at least, right? And so she's the host on that cruise. And I love that. So ideally, I would like to have podcast hosts, sober authors, people in the alcohol-free space leading their own tours, and then I would just facilitate them putting them together, right? And that way we can capture a larger audience, right? Because the whole idea is community. People want the community. They want the alcohol-free like-mindedness taking place. And yeah, let's get as many people leading tours as we can. So on our website, we have a whole section on host your own. So,
Mm.
people can
Yeah, that's such
still.
a great idea. And you know what you're talking about here too. It makes me think, Darcy, of, who do you want to take a tour from? It's the locals. Like you want to have people that are passionate about their hometown or their experiences. And that brings a certain flavor that you don't get from, the guide perhaps that just goes anywhere and everywhere. And so I think that's brilliant. I think that's brilliant. When I first became a nutritionist. I stopped drinking alcohol, became a nutritionist, and then I became an alcohol-free coach. But when I was in between, and I was I led what I called nourishing tours and tastings here in the Gold Country of California, where I live.
Mm.
Because what I realized, Darcy, was that people would come in, it's a tourist destination, and they would come to our beautiful downtown and they were going to the wineries and the breweries. And it was like, but we have a fermented food store. We have a CBD chocolate shop. We have an olive oil store. We have all of these cool little places that people are missing. And so I started this nourishing tours and food tasting. And then I hooked up with a local guy who was offering like random experiences. And so he would promote it and I would give the tours. And unfortunately, COVID came along and put an end to it. So I was only able to do it for a little less than a year, but it was really fun. And what was cool about it was, meeting people who were open to experiencing something different. And it wasn't about being alcohol free, although I did say, we won't be doing wineries and breweries. I don't know if they were drinking people or not drinking people, but it was really about having a different experience in my hometown or what is now my hometown. So I totally get that. That's very cool.
And especially with the alcohol-free movement that's taking place. Like, I mean, let's face it, there's new ideas and new business owners popping up all the time, right? So locals are more in tune with that, right, than just a regular host. So they'll be able to take you to that speakeasy that has the mocktails or whatever, right? Like they'll know about it, right? So yeah, no, I love the Sober Locals program, and that I hope, again, we launched our website 2 weeks ago today. People will see that, and I would love to have a New Orleans host. I would love to have a Chicago host, right? And yeah, no, if you build it, they will come. So now that the concept's out there, I'm hoping that people will want to host city tours, and that will branch out more.
Yeah, I love it. And again, like you said, it allows people to tap into their passion, share their passion, and build that beautiful sense of community. And for people to realize that all of these experiences are still available to us, and it has nothing to do with whether we're drinking or not. So you have another very cool part of your business, Darcy, that I want to make sure we touch on. Will you tell us a little bit about what you call the Dry Grads travel program?
I would love to tell you about dry grads. So I've been, as we discussed earlier, I've been in the travel industry for multiple years, right? And what's out there for the young traveler? We have G Adventures, fantastic company, right? That focuses on younger travelers, and we have Kentucky, which I took. That's the your tour I was telling you about when I was in my 20s. That all I saw was the nighttime, right? So kind of by fluke, like when I put together the Italy trip that I had the travel writer on and we covered the boot, the whole thing, in 13 days. My son came. So my son graduated that year. And this is a funny story because I'm like, Dean, I want you to come on this alcohol free tour. And he's like, hey, man, I'm going to Italy. I'll do anything. And then he said to me, he goes, Mom, my two of my friends heard that I'm going to Italy and they want to come. So can you extend the invitation to their parents? And again, I kind of jumped into that shame world of like, oh, Dayton, I don't know. I don't think that this alcohol free trip is going to be something that your friends' parents are going to get on board with, right? And he's like, but please, mom. And I'm like, okay, okay, okay. So I called up these parents and I couldn't even get out a price tag, an itinerary or anything. I'm like, look, so I've started this alcohol-free business. Dayton's coming to Italy with me and he wants your son to come. And they're like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. So how much? Right. And I'm like, do you want to know where we're going? Do you want to hear like the cities we're going to stop in? And what was important to them is that their son was having a cultural experience and they knew that they weren't going to get into trouble because they knew that it was an alcohol free tour, right? So seeing them jump on board so quickly, like it was the easiest sale of my entire life, right? And they're just like literally writing those checks. I was like, okay, there's something here. And that being said, so Dayton came to Italy last year, and now in 2025, we have a Thailand trip taking place, and there'll be an annual trip. So it will just be one destination per year uh, until it grows, and then we'll branch out from there. But right now, I'm planning one per year. So we're going to Thailand in 2025, and we're doing Bangkok, Krabi, and I'm missing one. Anyway, oh, Chiang Mai. And so we stop in Chiang Mai, and then the kids are going on to. So I'm leading that tour. And then the kids go on to an elephant sanctuary where they're going to volunteer for 6 days, and then they're actually going to fly home on their own. So the owners of the elephant sanctuary are very clear that we're running an alcohol-free grad program, but they're getting that element of independence at the end. So they're with me as a guided tour at the beginning, and then they are dropped off at this elephant sanctuary where they get to volunteer for 6 days. The elephant sanctuary then takes them to the airport in Chiang Mai, and they get home on their own. So it's a really unique opportunity. And what I love about it so much is when you're traveling, and I can use myself as an example, when you're a young person, your peer group is back home, right? So now you're in wherever you are, you're in destination, and you're trying to make friends, and you're trying to get people to gravitate towards you. And guess what helps you make friends usually is alcohol, right? So that pressure of to drink when you're traveling as a young person is very, very, very strong, and things can go really, really wrong, right? So I love the fact that this is an available option to our young people. It's a safe way for them to travel with, again, like-minded people, right? So they're meeting some quality people while they're traveling from different parts of the globe, and they're coming together on a tour, and they're going to have fun in ways that don't involve trouble.
Yeah, it's so that's so cool because what I love about it is I think you and I talked when we were together that parents often want to give their child a trip at the end of their high school career, and they are choosing things that are traditionally like, well, they're going to go to Aruba with their friends and let's hope it all turns out well, and, so the idea is out there, but the parents, with an alcohol-free travel option, then now they know that, their kids are not going to be placed in that precarious situation. And obviously you can't be responsible for everything a 21-year-old does or a 20-year-old does, but it's beautiful to think about what we're talking about as adults coming along and rediscovering ourselves. Like they're having that experience of this beautiful time away and this cultural experience that is not clouded by alcohol or is not alcohol focused. My son went on a mission trip
Mhm.
to Peru. And so they did, they went with their church group or I think it was Young Life. And so they went to Cusco, is that right? And then they went to, yeah, and then they went and, did Machu Picchu. And then they went and volunteered at an orphanage. And he just had this beautiful experience. And of course, alcohol was not a part of it. And so I love that you're offering something that can really set the stage for a young adult to maybe not feel like they have to have alcohol a part of every experience.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And yeah, my kids go to a Christian school, and my son did a Mexico missions trips last year. So same kind of idea, but like, I mean, let's face it, a missions trip does have a spiritual component, right? So this is an inclusive way to invite people into an alcohol-free travel experience for young without the mission component. which I
Yeah.
do believe in too. So
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good. I mean, it's just inclusivity. What we're
yeah,
talking about is,
yeah,
so it's a secular option to have a similar experience for people who necessarily, don't want to have their child. They're not affiliated with a certain religion, and that's not part of their family values, and that's okay. And so now, again, more options. I'm just falling in love with Hooked Travel because, the more I hear about it, Darcy, is just the opportunity to share these beautiful experiences in a way that is, available to more people.
mm,
Yeah. Love it. I love it.
thank you.
Yeah. So please tell us what's coming up next, like anything coming on that will be outside of what you've been offering so far. I know it's just been a few years. And so is there anything new on the horizon that you're thinking about offering? And then tell us where people can find you.
Well, you can find me at my infomercial here. Um, hooked-on-travel.com. So hooked-on-travel.com. Um, and I have really touched base on all the trips that are coming up. So the Sober Locals is New York at Christmas. So amazing with Melissa McGovern. That's right around the corner. Mexico, we have a Mexico option in November. Iceland is on the roster. Tanzania is on the roster. Um, yeah, Australia for the wine tour. Of course, you're not doing wine tour the whole time. We're only hitting 4 wineries, and the rest is, the Great Barrier Reef, some pretty cool things. Germany is on the roster. Oh, Morocco is on the roster.
Yeah,
Nobody's.
it might be time. I think it
I,
sounds amazing, right? That might be time.
I still believe in Morocco, so it's still on the so yeah, no, I really invite people to take a look at the website, and it outlines our vibe and our philosophy really well too.
Yeah. And then with the Sober Locals and the Dry Grad, what a unique opportunity for people to just explore. And again, if you are wondering, some of those things that you might be curious about, what did I used to love? What have I always looked forward to? How can I use this travel experience as a way to get more in touch with who I am becoming on my alcohol-free journey? So I think it's all just amazing, Darcy. I'm so glad we had a chance to connect. Thank you so much for coming on the Sober Edge podcast.
Well, thanks for having me.
I want to thank you for tuning in to the Sober Edge podcast. This is a place for important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I want to invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, Becoming More, a guide to loving your sober life. And I would be so grateful if you enjoyed this podcast, if you would leave a rating and review, as it will help more people find their sober edge.